The John C. Calhoun statue is no more at Marion Square. Today, I talk one-on-one with Charleston City Council member Keith Waring for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Councilman Keith Waring, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Quintin. I've always found your questions very interesting and our conversation always involved. Look forward to it.
Well, thank you so much. Obviously, as you know, the John C. Calhoun statue has come down after a unanimous vote by City Council on Tuesday night. I know that you told me just a few minutes ago off camera that, hey, yesterday was a great day. Talk to me about that day.
It was a great day because I think, we always talk about America always working towards becoming a more perfect union. I thought that was a good step towards becoming a better, not only a better city, a better state, but certainly a better country. When I think in terms of, why Mr. Calhoun was put up, in particular, when he was put up, it wasn't put up for everybody. It wasn't put up for what we reach for today, unity. It wasn't put up for advancing America forward. So when I see that, corrections should be made. Now, it took 124 years to make that correction, but that's been done. And as I said, I will support, and I know I'll probably have some detractors in my community for this. But when I mean community, I don't mean just African American community. I mean totality. I think that history should be taught in the proper context, and I mean the whole history. Yes, he was a representative, a senator, a secretary of state, secretary of war, vice president. But it's almost unequivocally that he was unequivocal, I should say, that he was the leading national proponent for the institution of slavery. And I don't see how that's a common good. And I don't see how you cannot teach that. He was a leading proponent for the bloodiest war, and that led to the bloodiest war in this country's history, nullification, which basically was seceding from the Union. In other words, we want to set up a separate country. Well, you pick your number, but I've seen 650,000 Americans died in that war. 2 days ago in the paper I read it was 850,000. World War I and II combined didn't have that. So certainly Vietnam War didn't, Korean War didn't. Hugely divisive would be an understatement, but it was never good for the country. And I look at, could America have defeated Hitler's army if the Confederates had won and we had two separate countries? It took a United States of America to defeat the world domination that Hitler sought. Where would we be if his leadership Mr. Calhoun's leadership had prevailed? The world would be different. So that the balance of that history needs to be taught.
And you talked earlier about proper context. What got Charleston City Council from saying, hey, we might put a historical marker down there to explain what happened and who John C. Calhoun was, to saying, hey, we will remove the statue?
Well, that historical context didn't go over well on council. As a matter of fact, it was deferred and never came back because it just wasn't. I think the majority of people on council, I think that was a noble effort to try that. I just didn't agree with that because putting a plaque at the base of where I guess the human eye would see versus a statue that towers 115 feet in the air you're just patronizing people with that. You're placating people with that. No human being should be put on a pedestal that high, in my opinion, anywhere in this state or anywhere in this country. So that's just my opinion on that. So, and that's what I'm gonna support.
And let me get back to, obviously, yesterday. It took, I believe, 15 hours to take down Mrs. Calhoun off of his perch on Marion Square. Were you all as city council members ever given a blueprint on how this statue should have been taken down?
No, that's the thing. I don't think there are any plans when, you know, Charleston is always a city that's steeped in history, but I don't think there were any plans in the archive anywhere that we could pull up to say, well, this is how it was built. And these are the key components to assemble it. And obviously these would lead to the components that would disassemble, enable its taking down. So, for the most part, they got to the job site and had to kind of figure it out. And I think, you know, people say, oh boy, that was a tough booger to bring down. I attribute that to the laborers, probably many of which were African American back in that day, to their skill and craftsmanship. And when they did things, they did it the right way. So it wasn't easy putting it up. It was going to be a complicated solution to bring it down, but it came down.
And let me ask this too, why didn't city council vote to allow the citizens to decide to take this statue down?
It wasn't a referendum to put it up, Quintin. And that's why you elect stakeholders. These decisions should be made by stakeholders. And if you disagree with the stakeholder, you have these performance reviews. We call them elections. You either vote to support that person because you agree with those decisions made. And if you don't, you get somebody else. I mean, that's the way our system works. So governing by popular vote, I mean, on issues after issue, what's going to be the next issue that we put out as a litmus test on a referendum? I don't think that's why people get elected. I think you get elected to make the hard decision, and if you can't, move off and let somebody else have a shot.
Are you fearful for your next reelection?
No, I've never been fearful for any election because the seat belongs to the people, Quintin. It's not a personal possession of mine. When you hear me speak about representation, you'll always hear me refer to District 7. I represent District 7. You'll never hear me say my seat. Oftentimes you'll hear politicians say, well, my seat on my district, this seat doesn't belong to me and it's not my district. I live in that district. Certainly, I care about it deeply. I live in this city. I care about it. I love this city, but it's not a personal possession of mine. So it's a privilege to serve, and people give you that opportunity, and they have the right to give. They also have the right to take it away.
And with the removal of the statue, Keith, who actually is going to pay for this? How much will this actually cost the average taxpayer here in the city of Charleston?
Well, right now, we don't know. Believe it or not, we've got some wonderful citizens that's willing to step up and assist with that. And that's still yet to be fully determined. But let me tell you, Quintin, there's a lot of goodness in America. You know, and sometimes in the news media, we focus on the negativity of it. But when you spend money to bring a community together, it's like, I forget what credit card company it is, but you remember they used to have that commercial, good things, and then they'll end it up by saying it's priceless.
Right.
It's priceless when you do things that bring unity together. What did it cost after Mother Emanuel tragedy to put those banners around Marion Square of unity, of quotes from President Kennedy, of the goodness that we know about this country, to advertise that out there? No one ever asked that question. Okay. Certainly people asked the question about how much did the racial bias and police audit cost. But I don't think anyone who voted for that will say that was a dollar that was unwisely spent. It is bringing our community together. It's improving our police force, both inside and out, and relationship with communities. Even going through this tough time that we've gone through with the upheaval, I think it was May 30th, you know, with the marauding and breaking of windows. Our police department is reaching out and communicating more. Sure, some people are dissatisfied, but look at the coordination that took place from our neighboring cities and jurisdictions that the very next day came in, helped out, to say, no, we're going to have a better environment than setting buildings on fire and breaking windows.
Now that the statue has been removed, Keith, how are you guys going to connect the communities with affordable housing, jobs, education, and opportunities for minorities?
It's a continual effort. Affordable housing is a priority. Um, Finding funds to do it is the challenge. You know, Quintin, we put a man on the moon, brought him back, and to prove it, we did it again. So I've been asked that question: can you create affordable housing in a rising real estate market? And that's what Charleston has, a rising real estate market. And then my answer to that is, of course you can. Okay, and we have in the city of Charleston, and we are doing it in the city of Charleston. North Charleston is doing it. I rode up last weekend up in the Height area.
Yeah.
Where they're building some affordable housing up there, where their city council gave variances to enable the developer to put in the small houses that are germane and
Oh, yeah.
in keeping with the houses that were built 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Uh, the city of Charleston can learn from that because we have a bureaucratic structure that makes it difficult to create affordable housing. And what we need to do is remove a lot of that, the rules and requirements in the city of Charleston that will enable the increase of affordable housing to take place.
And what's the increase of affordable housing right now?
When you say what's the increase, what do you mean? How many units we building or what?
Yeah, so far.
We've got a number of complexes going up that we've actually funded. As a matter of fact, on the bridge side, I remember when they said affordable. When I say the bridge site, the old Cooper River Bridge site that came down, and that property was eventually returned back to the city of Charleston. We've got 56 units, I believe, going up right now. I think it's a $14 or $15 million development. It's just about finished. I think a lot of people are passing it thinking it's market rate housing. It's actually affordable housing. It's actually off of Meeting on Lee Street. There's a parcel B that's getting ready to break ground. That's going to be named after one of my former colleagues and very good friends, Councilman James Lewis, who's been a huge proponent of that. We're getting ready to break ground on it. And again, that was public property that was returned from the highway department back to the city of Charleston. And that community is being reknitted, if you will, with what will be probably at least 100, 150 units of affordable housing, which would, when you go back to see how many houses when the bridge project came through initially, I mean, the Cooper River Bridge project came through, I don't believe it displaced that many actual houses in that block. So we're actually coming back with more affordable housing. Now it's been decades and decades later, I grant you. We're coming back with more affordable housing in that actual block than it originally existed.
And you know, most museums and academic institutions may or may not want the John C. Calhoun statue. What value would John C. Calhoun add to their mission?
I think if the total story is told, I think it makes it more interesting. You see, holding positions, people will look at that as being honorable. I was a member of Congress. I was a member of the U.S. Senate. I was vice president. But today, you ask deeper questions. What did you do when you held those positions? What progress was made? What were your beliefs? What did you put your highest energy towards? That's the part that was never told. That's the part that was divisive in America. And that's the part, him having achieved those heights, but what did he do when he was there, and how did it help the country? When I mean the country, I don't mean the Confederate States of America. I mean the United States of America. I think that dichotomy needs to be taught. I think our children need to learn from that going forward. You know, one thing, Quentin, about this, these young folk speaking the truth. I am so proud of these peaceful protesters. I am so proud of them because I'm a child. I'm born in 1955. So I was born into the segregated South. But when the South integrated, we were part of that. I was in seventh grade when I went to the so-called white school at the time. And yeah, it was a period of upheaval. And remember, that happened from elementary school to middle schools to high schools to college, the workplace. All of that was going on in America at the same time. So to say that now with the challenges that face society, our society today, I had a very good friend. His name is Clem Richardson. He lives in New York. He's a former editor with the Daily News in New York. Called me when the situation in Minneapolis happened, and the subsequent demonstrations that broke out across major cities across America. I hadn't paid attention to. I was just obviously I saw people marching in the streets, reminded me of the civil rights movement, frankly. But he pointed out, he said, you know, Keith, this group looks like America. Integration has worked. I said, what do you mean integration has worked? He said, look at those demonstrators, those people out there in the streets marching, speaking, calling for truth and justice. They're every color and hue in America. White, black, brown, Asian, you name it. This thing is worldwide. You even had the Pope that mentioned the name of Mr. George Floyd. It's international. We've never had it like this. He's right. My friend Clem Richardson is right with that. And I think that gave, it brought a confluence to stakeholders to say, you know what? You can't turn a blind eye to what these young folk are saying. These young folk don't have to wait until they can get elected. What they're saying is right, and we need to act on that now. And I got to tell you, I'm proud of the confluence that brought this situation, in particular to Mr. Calhoun, to finally being handled in a better way than it was initially handled back in the late 1800s.
Now that the statue is gone, will this actually hurt tourism?
You know, I think that's a false cry. I don't know anybody that came to Charleston. We get almost 7+ million visitors a year. I'm born and reared here. I never had a person come to tell me I came to Charleston because I want to see the Calhoun statue. I never had one person that's told me that. I have had people that come to Charleston who have asked me, and I mean white and black, why do you have Calhoun up there? I've had that question posed to me, but to say that it's going to hurt Charleston tourism, I just believe that to be false.
And in your mind, Keith, what should replace the John C. Calhoun statue on that ground?
As I said a little bit earlier, I'm not a believer that any citizen ought to be placed that high. By the way, John C. Calhoun didn't even live in Charleston, so why was he placed so high? He's from Abbeville, by the way. I don't know that they even have a statue there in Abbeville. But that said, I'm not trying to diminish that. I just don't think any citizen ought to be placed that high. So, you know, we all are created equal. I like the idea of seeing people eye to eye. But that said, remember the city of Charleston doesn't own that property. We own the statue.
Right.
The statue is given us. So the property that it sits on actually belongs to the Washington Light Infantry. So when the statue is removed, that decision will be made up to them. It could just be green space, I don't know, but that's a question to be directed to them.
And what's going to be the future relationship between the city and the infantry?
I think it'll be enhanced. See, the infantry was kind of getting caught up in a controversy. It's actually getting to the place, they make a few dollars off of renting out that space. Over the years, you see a number of events held there. Wildlife Expo, which is one of the largest tourist events annually that comes. The Wine and Food Festival had already announced that they would no longer use Marion Square for its event. So that would have been a loss of revenue. And you could tell the momentum along that way was continuing. And they didn't deserve that, the Washington Light Infantry. It was a controversy. I guess you could say you can go back to the late 1800s and they didn't have to give them the right to put the statue there. I understand that. But today's stewards, they didn't own the statue. They did own the land, but the city owned the statue. And quite frankly, elected officials played around with that decision too long. It was recorded clearly in the city minutes that that statue was given to the city. But I guess timing is everything, Quintin. And again, but for those young people rising up, coming in the street, speaking truth, some of the changes that you will see being made in America, I'm convinced would not be happening.
And let me ask you this sentimental question.
Mm-hmm.
If your father were alive today and he was standing right there next to you as this Calhoun statue was coming down, what do you think he would say?
He would have a lot of emotions. And the reason I say that is my father used to have us in the civil rights marches. Many of those marches started at Mother Emanuel. And as those marches would progress, I'm going to say west, on Calhoun Street, you had to pass that statue. And it was a very sore spot with African Americans. As a child, I was taught, I think the first one, I might have been 11 or 12 years old. I didn't know who he was. But the elders in the march aptly explained the hate that he had for African Americans. And I never understood as a child. Now, as a man at 64 years old, as an 11-year-old or 12-year-old, I didn't understand why would they let him be up there so high. Okay, I didn't understand that, a person who hated. But it's pretty gratifying that, and I'm sure my daddy's seen it from above. My parents are seeing it from above. They would have been very happy that right prevailed. And when I mean right prevail, bringing that mindset down from on high, he would have been very happy with that. He would have been very proud of the vote from the mayor and city council. It wasn't a divided vote; it was a unanimous vote. And to hear our colleagues on council bringing truth with their prepared talks. I don't know if you saw that city council meeting. It was on Zoom, but hopefully it's recorded. Councilman Kevin Shealy and Harry Griffin, Councilman Harry Griffin, and a new councilman, Carl Brady, and who majored in history, by the way, did research and brought fact points to the conversation. Councilman Ross Appel, Peter Shade, they spoke so eloquently as to the reasons to bring him down, bring that statue down, that when I rose my hand to be recognized, I said, listen, everybody on this council knows I can speak for myself. But Councilman Shealy was so eloquent in his explanation as to why. I said Councilman Shealy spoke for me tonight. I can tell you the respect. And actually, there was a closeness. I mean, we always had a respect for one another on this council, but I think there's been an additional closeness having come through this together the way we have. So there's I won't say we won't disagree on an issue or two going forward, but there's been a bonding and effect through this process. Because remember now, you've got a lot of people calling my telephone, emails, tell them we're doing the wrong thing. And they probably they having the same thing done to them, maybe in some cases more pointedly. So they have to wade through people that in some cases they like, and they find out, wow, I didn't realize you had that opinion, to keep it up there. So, and that's for them, a lot of times, that's the first time that you run into that kind of racial strife from somebody in your own neighborhood as to why that statue should remain. And remember that disagreement or nastiness, if you will, occurs when we're not around. It's not where your African American colleague can come in and step up and say, well, what about the other side? Let me tell you the hurt that has occurred from the other side, from a people who've had to endure the legacy of the hate that he espoused. When those conversations take place, in particular with our white counterparts, among their peers, we're not around. So for them to come back and stand up, yeah, I do respect the stance that they took, and it does build a bond with me going forward with them. Mm-hmm.
With them. And you talk about mindset and votes. What should be the conversation now about people wearing masks in the city of Charleston?
Listen, from a health perspective, that's coming up. We've got an emergency meeting tonight, and you right on point, Quintin. I understand some people don't want to do it, but when you have a pandemic, and although we're on a Zoom meeting, but if we were in person, I could transfer a disease that potentially could kill you. I think we should take the proper precautions. Does it get away from liberties and all of that? I don't. Does it take away from your freedom if I try to keep you safe from something that I may be harboring or carrying, unbeknownst to me? So I wear a mask. Does the city have to make me do that? No. But if I were a little bit hard-headed, and I'm putting that mask on because the city said, if you don't put it on, I may write you a ticket for a fine. And if that encouraged me to put that mask on, then I think it would have been good advice or good governance. Because right now we're spiking again, Quintin. The numbers are going up, and it's getting pretty alarming. Even if you look at the national news, 25 out of 50 states, half of America is spiking on something that we don't have a cure for, and we don't have a definite treatment protocol for. Should we do something? I think it's only responsible that we should do something. That's my opinion on that.
Councilman Keith Waring, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Look forward to the next one, Quintin. Take care. And you know what? You stay safe. And you put on that mask when you get in that public gathering, okay?
Thank you so much.